you vet. If you're not married yet, you vet properly. But after marriage, you have to learn. You have to learn how to handle crisis and conflict right now already, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to show up from a blind spot. You're going to get caught up in your feelings, and if you're prepared to be able to handle those things, you're in a better position. And marriage is fantastic. Marriage is beautiful if you can figure those things out that I just mentioned right there. But if you approach marriage with an entitlement spirit, expectations of whatever you think your ideology is, you're going to fail. You're going to become like a statistics like everybody else. Okay, very, very important. And these are sizable books. They are minimum 200 pages. You can download them absolutely for free by simply going to, for example, this one, you just go to getmymarriageback.com, smartrealestatewholesaling.com, realestatemoneysecrets.com. So yes, I am a 3 times author, and those books are out there for your consumption, and they are also available everywhere on Amazon, anywhere that you pick up books. So in case you prefer a physical book like that, we got this video. I want to talk about pygmies. Okay. I feel awkward saying that word pygmy, but it's a real thing, and there's a lesson here that I wanted to extract here. But there's 5 clips I wanted to play around this topic. Okay, there are 5 clips that I want to play. Very short clips. I try to keep it short, but let's get into it. These videos are by a young lady with a channel called Mahogany Pink. I just stumbled into her. These people, I just keep stumbling into all this kind of people. But anyway, quite an interesting take. Very intelligent, of course. One thing that's not lacking when it comes to the dating scenes of 2022 is not intelligence. Okay, maybe emotional intelligence, but not intelligence. Definitely not, not when it comes to like these extremely smart people, very well put together presentation, make good cases, shit like 80% of divorces are initiated by women. I mean, that sounds smart as shit until you start to dig in deeper and you're like, wait, yeah, they filed for divorce, but what happened before the divorce, right? You start to ask further question that, of course, majority of them are not willing to go through that rabbit hole with me, at least, right? But yes, let's go into this first video and then we'll talk about it.
Deserve a response. First, they may try to invalidate, to attack channels like my own and try to debunk my videos, is that they miss the point entirely. If my channel's aim is to display why black men may not always be black women's most suitable partner, then debunking that would be to display how they are. If my
so this lady sounds like she's advocating for divesting, or opening up your options, when it comes to dating and anything like that, and not, of course, a lot of people, when they hear that, they go straight for the shooter, and they start to feel like, oh yeah, so don't date black men. No, she's actually made it clear that she's not saying don't date black men if you find one. She's just saying keep your options open, right? All right. So but before we get into this, what is pygmy? So pygmy is something, let me see if I can give it a shot to give it. As a matter of fact, instead of doing that, why don't I just pull up the probably the Urban Dictionary mini somewhere, right? Pygmy God meaning. There you go. Yeah, let's pick that up. There you go. Let's see what the dictionary says instead of me trying to butcher it up, right? It won't make any sense there. Add to stream. All right. So here's what it says. It says, according to Urban Dictionary, the top definition: a girl who goes out of her way. All right. So it's very similar to what a lot of people will call, on the other side, they will call a simp. A man who goes out of her way to impress a girl who is not reciprocating is essentially a simp. Precisely what makes it a simp is the expectation and the entitlement to the reciprocation. Okay. Now, the pygmy girl, according to Urban Dictionary here, says a girl who goes out of her way to impress men by ensuring she is not like other girls. Now, it's very important to pay attention to the she is not like other girls. Okay. Now, if you've done enough study, if you've been on this channel long enough, you know that women are inherently the same across board in so many ways. Of course, people are not a monolith, right? We know that. People are unique. We get that, right? We get that part, right? but there's so much that they have in common when it comes to how they relate with men, and it just happens to be the same across board for the most part. Okay, for a typical woman, okay, because she's more so in our full essence within the space of the feminine energy. She doesn't give a shit about how you feel if she's caught up in her own feelings. Okay, that's just the way it is. You made her do everything that went wrong. As far as she's concerned, she doesn't realize she's doing it. It's just natural space she goes to. Okay, but also that's also part of the social construct that we live in, right? After all, we're the leaders. We're supposed to be the leader, right? And we want to remain the leader, right? So we don't really have much choice than to take responsibility in trying to understand the evolutionary reasons why things are the way they are, as opposed to blaming people, as opposed to judging people or blaming them or calling them out of their names and things. So a pick me girl basically go out of our way to appease men, okay, including making sure they're not like other girls. Okay, so when you have a woman that's very outspoken about how she's not like the modern women, very outspoken, not in her behavior. The behavior, just like what I said about men earlier, right? Your actions speak louder than your words. I'm watching your actions. That's why I tell young men, especially that in this space, you got to be careful with pick-me's. Because a lot of them are saying, no, find you a pick-me. I was like, no, you got to be careful with pick-me's, because the same work, if not more, of vetting that you have to do, you still have to do across board anyway. You can't go for automatic. Since she knows all the talking points, she's appeasing to men. She knows what men wants. If she's saying all those things, generally that's not the natural state of a woman, and that's the more so reason why you have to make sure that this is what you want. Okay, so if you're on the extreme end of modern women, meaning fuck men, right? Men are scum. That's masculine energy. Guess what? If you're on the other extreme end, and as a woman you say fuck all this modern women, we need to protect our black men. If you're very outspoken about that, that's also masculine energy. Okay, that's also an energy. It's just polar opposites. It's the same thing essentially. Okay, what you're looking for is somewhere in between. Somewhere in between, like normal human being. They generally are probably not too soaked up in all of these online spaces. Now they are the minority, unfortunately. Okay, but it doesn't mean there are no good women in these spaces. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that just them being in these spaces and repeating the talking points to you, and you're having a hard on because they're saying your talking point, they're making you feel good, that right there is something you have to be extremely careful about, because it's not what people say, including yourself. It's about people's actions. You have to watch their action more so over time. So now this young lady, Mahogany Pink, she falls in the category of the extreme other end of things. Sick divesting. She's basically attacking the pick-me's. I don't like that either. Okay? It's not about me. It's not me not liking it. You have to be careful about that either. Okay? Because some of you will see that and, you know, your muscles, you get swollen and you find a very nice girl, you should go after her, right? No. Slow your roll. You have to vet everybody accordingly, equally. Use your spirit of discernment now. Watch the actions. The words, I guess they are important, but only to a certain level. There's limitations. All right?
My videos aim to highlight to black women how blind loyalty to black men is not in their best interest, then debunking that would be highlighting why it is. But internet pick-meshas never do this. Internet pick-meshas regurgitate tired old talking points and misinformed statistics that barely deserve a response. First, they may try to invalidate your experiences as a black woman. Particularly, they may talk about how colorism isn't really a...
Well, they do the same thing too, right? She's right that they're regurgitating talking points. She's absolutely right about that. I've seen them. I'm not gonna mention names. You may see some pictures in her videos, right? But some of them are my friends. So I gotta be nice, okay? But again, I don't know them enough. Again, the point is get to know people. Don't just go by their talking points. Slow down, easy, right? Right? What I want to ask that some of these ladies that you see their pictures here, I want to see their YouTube analytics. It is probably 90%, minimum 80% men, and not a lot of women. And what does that tell me? That tell me that the viewpoints are not exactly balanced. Okay? They're not exactly balanced. For a woman to have a channel and it's all about and she's not selling OnlyFans and it's 90% men, something is off there with respect to social constructs, socialization, how the world actually operates. People are getting a delusional form of truth from that kind of space. It's basically misery love companies. It's like an echo chamber. All right. Let's keep going.
Prejudice that you're facing in relation to black men. In fact, someone purporting to debunk this notion made a video and cited a study that she claimed said that colorism isn't really hurting black women in the marriage market because after 30, there are more married dark-skinned black women than married light-skinned black women. I immediately took interest because how could anyone actually know that? What metric are we using to determine who is light-skinned and who is not? Is it the Fitzpatrick scale, the brown paper bag test, or are the white scientists just casually guessing? So I had to look up the research for myself and saw that this was a study over a decade old. The jokes started to write themselves because not only did this 14-year-old study not say that colorism wasn't causing a marriage squeeze for young black women, the entire premise of the study was that it is a fact that colorism is causing a marriage squeeze for young black women, and I'll quote their abstract. The interracial marriage gap that opened in the past 50 years is generally attributed to a decline in the availability of young black marriageable men. We contend that the associated shortage of desirable men in the marriage market provides those black men who are sought after with the opportunity to attain a high status spouse, which has placed a premium on having light skin shade. We provide evidence based on data consistent with this hypothesis for young.
All right, so let's break down the first sentence of this study, right? The interracial marriage gap that opened in the past 50 years is generally attributed to a decline in the availability of young black marriageable men. Marriageable men. Who gets to determine if you're a marriageable man? Not you. This is the problem. This is one of the problems with manosphere, right? Yeah, there are marriageable men. There are men making six figures, men up to 40 years and have no children. All that shit is meaningless, okay? Especially if you're using it as a talking point to make a case without listening to the other side. The best thing to do, right? Yes, I'm teaching you how to talk, right? Is to find out why, this is what the statistic says. Why do you think that way? And get some insights from that. Not absolute truth, but get some insights from whatever the young ladies have to say about that, right? So the question comes to mind, is there actually a decline in the availability of young black marriageable men? From what I can see, yes. And it has nothing to do with money. Many of them are extremely smart kids, make good money, $200,000, $300,000 a year, just not marriageable, evident by the fact that you are 30, 31, 32, 35, 37, 47 years old man, and you cannot maintain a long-term relationship. Yes, including if you've been divorced. You're not marriageable. It's not an indictment. It's just what it is. That's what your result says. And we need to acknowledge that first so we can come to the space of saying, okay, what could we do better next time? But if we never acknowledge the results we created, we've got a serious problem. But again, she's talking about colorism and all this other. She sounds extremely smart, extremely what some people may call masculine. She's in her cerebral a lot. Doesn't mean that she couldn't be a good wife. I'm just saying she's on the extreme. It looks like she's fighting girls on the other side. If you're on this side, you're fighting girls on that other side. Yeah, that's a little weird for me. That's what I'm telling young men to watch out for. Be careful either way. Be careful either way. What you're looking for is somewhere in between. They engage, they disengage, they live real life. They also have room for possibilities like, hey, they are blue pill. right? They're not just all about stats, empirical data. That means men are scum. No, like if you're carrying, that's a lot of energy you're carrying around, and that will affect your personal life. Either you realize it yet or not. All right. So
Black women. Our theoretical analysis of the marriage market reveals that policies to
let's go on
increase
to the
the
next
desire to
video.
marry on the part of young Black women will enhance the importance.
You were a little girl, you've been seeing images of Black love on the TV screen that looked like this, or this, or this. But in reality, Black love has always looked a little more like this.
Extra aggressive.
You look are you kidding me? You are the fuck.
Investigators say after killing Kenyatta, O'Neill brutally murdered his 9-year-old daughter Ranivia and tried to stab to death his 8-year-old.
All right, so let me break this down. I'm going to drag this back here. Actually, a lot of people experience this, okay? You see what she just did there? She started like, well, Hollywood has painted it like this, like this, like this. And then suddenly she wants to call this the reality. What was that? Maury show? Jerry Springer, right? That's completely false. You know, that she's selling something. She's selling snake oil. Whatever that is, she's selling divesting. She's selling you fear, right? Basically, the title of this video was, I think it had to do with the falsehood of Black love. Black love exists. All you need it to be is exist. I live in one, okay? I have friends that live in Black love. Yes, those that don't live in Black love tend to be the loudest on the internet. But Black love exists. Just like you see in the beginning of this, I'm going to play it again. Just like the other side of things exist as well. The question is that, are you more inclined to projecting your own experiences on other people and then call it like, yeah, all that is bullshit? I have friends that say love is a scam, religion is a scam. Then I just tell the person, well, life is a scam. You're right. There's so many things, that pictures that Hollywood painted, that is not going to be exactly like that. That's just not the reality, right? Nonetheless, we know that a life of living in paradise exists. Feeling like you live in paradise, feeling like bliss, like you're actually happy right now, that actually do exist, right? So you got to be careful what kind of space where you're hanging out, who you're listening to. People that tend to paint only negative picture of what's happening in real life. If that's how it was, you couldn't get out on the streets in front of your house. There'll be cops everywhere every single time. Maybe you live in that neighborhood. I want you to understand that you have options and you can move out. I know it's hard, but you can, okay? You just have to ask a little bit more questions. Let's keep going.
You were a little girl, you've been seeing images of Black love on the TV screen that looked like this, or this, or this. But in reality, Black love has always looked a little more like this.
Extra aggressive.
You look are you?
That's not true. This exists, the other side exists too. That's more so of accurate narrative, as opposed to now we should push this down the throat. And now, how do you expect a young woman to watch this and not expect this, or have our guards up, right? Let me go on to play the next one here. All right. She's a very smart girl. I really enjoyed her presentations, but I just feel like she's doing the exact same thing she's accusing the Pickmes of doing. Once people start spewing all kind of statistics at you, you're like, oh, let me find the source. And I go to the source, blackdemographics.com, and I look at it. Okay, what's the source of this? What's the studies? And okay, 1,000 people were sampled. There are 7 billion people in the world. Like, give me a break.
Function of the Black American family are for the most part in agreement. The model of exclusive Black love, that is to say, a culture where Black people in America will only make themselves romantically available to other Black people in America, is unsustainable. Specifically, Black women's collective decision to make themselves exclusive.
Well, that's why people settle all the time. It's always been true that it's not sustainable. That's just data, right? So I'm never saying that data is not real. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm actually saying is that in spite of I'm not going to shame somebody for going after the best, because if you were going to go for PhD and so you don't say, hey, average people drop out. What you do is you go for the possibility, right? It's the same thing. I encourage people to go higher and do the best for themselves, right?
Exclusively available to black men is unsustainable. Why? Well, short answer, there aren't enough marriageable hetero black men to...
So that would be the second time I'm hearing her say that. A shortage of marriageable black men. That does not mean that you as a young lady will not find your own marriageable black man. That's not what it means. This is just what stats says. This is stat across, I don't know how many millions of, is it 40 million black people in America? That's just what this is, okay? They sampled 1,000 people that said, hey, there are a shortage of marriageable black men. You don't want to turn this to your reality. You don't want to shoot yourself on the legs before you enter the dating marketplace. That's essentially what these things will do to you. Even though they are right. Those are actual data, right? That we can take. If I was doing a study or something, I wanted to make a lecture, sure, I can use the data. But you as a person, you don't want to internalize this too much to the extent where you self-destroy and you start to feel like maybe you don't have a chance anymore. The truth is that you do have a chance, okay? That's just the reality.
Meet the demand of marriageable hetero black women. Most experts name mass incarceration as the leading cause, but whatever you think the issue is, the fact remains that the community has a shortage of gainfully employed black men who can support a family and are looking to marry a black woman, short by about...
Yeah. So that's that right there. Let me play this last.
Please say that the men aren't playing their part in the institution of black love as protectors and providers, and they're the ones who need to alter their behavior. Well,
so I strongly believe that the leaders are responsible, okay? Whoever wants to be the leader, man, woman, if you want to claim to be the leader, you're responsible, okay? Usually this is the junction where I'll get to and people say, well, yeah, I know you're going to blame men for everything. No, I'm not blaming men for everything, okay? What I'm saying is that you desire to be the leader, you need to take responsibility for the fall and the rise of whatever you're trying to build. It's just that simple. It's not that hard, right? Oh, so people shouldn't be held accountable? No, they should be held accountable by you being a leader first. You hold yourself, the way that process starts is you hold yourself accountable first and make sure that you're not missing any part of the puzzles, any pieces of the puzzle, okay? And just from me looking, just you complaining about women already tells me a lot more than I need to know, okay? It just tells me a lot, because remember, we live within a social construct and context, right? And no matter how much you want to be intentional, you can only be so much intentional to the extent of making sure you're swimming in the direction of the trend. If you don't do that, you will self-destruct. You will hurt yourself, because you can't swim against the trend of the ocean. You will hurt yourself, okay? And that's precisely what you're doing when you're complaining. When you're complaining about how people move from a social and emotional standpoint, you actually control that. You control your surroundings, okay? So you're not telling me a lot that I can really use to help you when you complain, when you're complaining, complaining. Okay? It's just a terrible place to be as a human being, period, especially as a man.
Because admission of failure on their part would be giving you permission to leave them. And a society, however dysfunctional, can survive with very few men, but a society without enough women will crumble. So, as a community, we've decided that come hell or high water, we are going to keep these black women on the hook, waiting and praying and competing for that good black man who will come into their lives and build a family.
If she wants to do that, she has the freedom to do that. What is this idea of trying to push data down the throat of people so they can disengage from their preference? People's preference are their preference, right? And yes, there are consequences for their preference. If their preference is off, time will tell. But what about attraction? You want to force black women to go marry a white man? You can't force that unless she's already attracted to white men, which there are black women that are attracted to men of different type of races. And those people have the freedom to do whatever they wish, right? But the idea that you have to force everybody to be open to something they were not attracted to in the first place, it's like, stop.
despite all evidence that this will happen for very few of you. Don't get me wrong, there are some very good black men out there. Hell, there are some even great men out there who are black, and there are some dusty black women, but numbers don't lie. Here's the math. You already...
So she's doing the same thing, just on the polar opposite that a lot of people in the manosphere would tend to do, right? She's doing the same thing.
Outnumber black men, and for a bunch of reasons, more than half of them will never marry anyone. Of those that remain, almost a quarter of them will marry women who are not black. Of the men left, 73% cannot financially support a household alone, and you will have to work. And due to the high rates of infidelity, domestic violence, and financial instability, 42% of these marriages will ultimately fail. Less than a quarter of you who get married will be in marriages where your husband earns more money than you. Less than 8% of those of you who get married to black men will have the luxury of not having to work at all. In fact, most high-earning black men remain bachelors or marry out of their race. So for all of you ladies with hypergamous, rich black girl fantasies, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's not likely going to happen, particularly for the more richly melanated sisters and the sisters with the West African. Realize that this is the likely outcome for those of you who have children with black men. And the likely outcome for those of you who open up your options is that you get engaged on the same timeline as the national average. But if you decide to play the waiting game in the hopes of finding black love, it's going to cost you. The men are being instructed to keep dangling the carrot of security over your head, claiming that they're only willing to marry you if you're feminine, fit, friendly, and blah blah blah. But they're already sleeping with you, already getting you pregnant, already living in your apartment on discounted rent. It's too sweet of a deal to keep you on the hook, and you ladies are falling for the okie doke, the old dusty bait and switch, asking you what do you bring to the table when they're already eating off of your plate. This hamster wheel that black women are on in the pursuit of black love only...
The hypocrisy is crazy. All of these guys speaking against this woman want this woman. I've seen too many examples that's just the truth. I'm sorry. Okay.
Only serves the men because it increases your desperation and thus lowers your expectations. And because it serves the men, the narrative will always be that you're not trying hard enough and you're not looking hard enough. Look at all of these token images of black love. It's not the numbers, it's you. You haven't found black love because you're not listening to men well enough. You're not giving the men what they want. You're not doing enough. You're not good enough for black men. You need to be doing...
So again, she's obviously somebody who consumes a lot of content in this space, right? And she's pushing against it with the polar opposite direction. That's not what you want, either men or women. Okay, first of all, as a woman, I want you to be aware that the pick me thing is something that we have to study a little bit more, definitely. For me personally, I'm generally not even attracted to pick me, right? It's just like I don't need a woman to repeat talking points in the name of advocating for men. I don't need it if especially I'm interested in the woman romantically speaking. Okay, I don't need that. I need you just to be a woman. Okay, so I can see what the hell I'm dealing with, right? On the flip side of things, the modern day woman thing is real, and many of you gentlemen will end up with one or two of them. Either you like it and you realize it or not, right? So, and it's actually extremely easy to get them to submit, but you have to be willing to learn game. It's extremely easy to get them to respect you and to trust you. You have to be willing to be consistent, right? As a man, you have to be solid in yourself, right? And either way, either she's a pick me or a modern woman, it wouldn't really matter, because you would have done not only doing your vetting properly, but also you've prepared yourself to be able to handle conflict and crisis, the inevitable conflict and crisis that will hit every marriage at some point. You're prepared to handle that, right? So that's very key. That's very key.
What white or Asian or other groups of women are doing to keep their men. Black men's practice of comparing black women to women of other races is age old. You, your mama, and your mama's mama were told that non-black women make better wives and that you need to take a page out of their books and learn to be more cooperative. And every criticism of black women for black men starts with, you want to know why we date women of other races? But they can't explain why these relationships tank faster than yours. They can't explain why black men in interracial marriages have higher divorce.
I mean, those relationships are just going to fail just as much if you don't do the work. The work is this simple. You vet. If you're not married yet, you vet properly. But after marriage, you have to learn you have to learn how to handle crisis and conflict right now already, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to show up from a blind spot. You're going to get caught up in your feelings, and if you're prepared to be able to handle those things, you're in a better position. And marriage is fantastic. Marriage is beautiful if you can figure those things out that I just mentioned right there. But if you approach marriage with an entitlement spirit, expectations of whatever you think your ideology is, you're going to fail. You're going to become like a statistics like everybody else. Okay, very, very important